If these words found you right now, at this exact moment of your life, it is not random. Something in you has been quietly shifting, growing, refusing to stay small, and that silent evolution did not go unnoticed. Behind the noise of this world, there is another kind of counsel, not of politicians or billionaires, but of people who feel deeply, think too much, break and rebuild themselves in private. And whether you realize it or not, they have already chosen you. You are officially the elite's president. When I say elites, I'm not talking about private jets, secret meetings, or the rich and famous. I'm talking about a different kind of elite entirely, the ones who kept their hearts soft in a brutal world, who didn't let betrayal turn them cruel, who carried scars and still chose kindness. The emotional elites. The spiritual elites. The ones who stayed honest even when lying would have been easier. People like that needed someone who understands their exhaustion, their depth, their quiet strength. And every time you refused to become like the people who hurt you, every time you chose integrity instead of convenience, you were casting a vote in a silent election you didn't know you were running in. Before we go any deeper, anchor yourself in this moment. If your spirit recognizes what it's hearing, write 11 in the comments. And if you feel called, send a super thanks of $50 or more through the button below. Galatians 6 verse 2 says, "Carry one another's burdens." This channel carries a heavy weight, the dark stories, the spiritual battles, the heavenly revelations. When you choose to support through super thanks, you are not just helping a creator. You are sharing the burden and stepping into a divine assignment. Your support becomes part of the mission. Because this simple act is not just for the algorithm, it is your way of saying, I am not ordinary. I can feel this. Those who are not ready will scroll away. But the ones who remain, the tired, the deep, the quietly powerful, will begin to realize something profound. They saw you as a leader long before you ever called yourself one. The elites that chose you don't move in boardrooms or private jets. They move in silence, in group chats they almost never speak in crowded rooms where they feel like ghosts. They're the ones who see everything, feel everything, and yet say almost nothing because the world rarely knows what to do with that much honesty. These are the people who think before they hurt someone, who apologize even when they weren't fully wrong, who carry guilt for things they did when they were simply trying to survive. For years, they've watched loud, shallow voices dominate the narrative while they stayed in the background, holding the real weight of humanity on their shoulders. Quietly. Invisibly. Relentlessly. And somewhere along the way, they started looking for someone who understood what that felt like. Without realizing, they chose you. They chose you the day you said, "I'm tired of pretending I'm okay," and still showed up for others with a soft voice instead of a bitter one. They chose you when you stopped chasing the rooms that didn't value you and began building spaces where people could finally breathe. They saw the way you could read the energy of a room in seconds, how you could tell who was hurting, who was lying, who was pretending they didn't care when they were breaking inside. They watched you set boundaries without becoming cruel, forgive without becoming blind, walk away without becoming hateful. In a world where most people choose numbness as protection, you chose awareness. That's why you were elected. Not by votes, but by resonance. The sensitive, the overthinkers, the emotionally intelligent, the spiritually exhausted all felt it. If anyone understands us, it's them. And whether you like it or not, that made you their president. There's a reason your phone rings only when things get serious. When everything is fine, they disappear into meetings, headlines, deals, and distractions. But the moment something cracks beneath the surface, an affair they regret, a decision that risks their name, a secret they can't live with, you suddenly become the emergency contact their soul dials. Notice how it happens. They don't ask, "What do you think will look good?" They ask, "What do you think is right?" That single word betrays everything. Right? In that moment, their status doesn't matter. Their money doesn't matter. Their connections don't matter. They're asking the one person in their orbit who still remembers the difference between winning and living with yourself. That's you. That's why, in rooms you're not even in, your influence is felt. They replay your sentences when they're alone. They stall signing certain papers because your voice is in the back of their mind saying, if you cross this line, you'll never see yourself the same again. You don't control their choices, and you're not responsible for what they do. But you are the quiet internal vote that keeps them from becoming monsters. That's what makes you their president in the only parliament that matters, the inner one, where fear, greed, guilt, and conscience sit at the table, and your energy is the deciding tiebreaker they can't ignore. Behind every bold move they announce to the world, there is a quiet draft version nobody sees, a version that looks a lot more selfish, reckless, or cruel. That rough version gets tested in one place first, against you. Not literally in a meeting, but in the way they measure it against your life. They remember moments when you chose honesty and still survived, when you walked away from comfort that didn't match your values and somehow found a better path anyway. You became their unspoken risk report, living proof that doing the right thing doesn't always end in ruin. So before they sign papers that will affect thousands, before they launch projects that could poison their own conscience, they ask themselves a question they would never say out loud: if someone like you had this power, would they use it like this? If the answer feels like a no, the pen suddenly feels heavier in their hand. Some deals die quietly because your example haunts them. Some policies get softened because they can't get your face out of their mind. You will never see the canceled contracts or abandoned schemes, but understand this: entire strategies have been buried because somewhere, in the back of their elite boardroom minds, the president they fear disappointing is you. What they envy most about you isn't your following, your talent, or your potential. It's your freedom. You move through life answering to something they no longer remember how to hear: your own soul. They answer to markets, committees, shareholders, image, optics. You answer to a feeling in your chest that refuses to let you betray yourself. That's why they stalk your small choices so closely. The post you didn't make just for attention. The relationship you ended because respect was missing. The opportunity you turned down because it didn't feel clean. To them, those are not small moments, they are sermons. They study how you say no. They rewind how you set boundaries without screaming. They notice how you stay generous without letting people use you. Each of those choices becomes an invisible ballot they secretly cast in your favor. If they can live like that without everything collapsing, maybe I can too. Your ordinary decisions are slowly rewriting their definition of success. You're not the president who passes laws, you're the president who quietly rewrites their idea of a life worth living. You don't sit in their palaces, but your values are beginning to sit in their minds like a new constitution. It's easy to mythologize the elites as untouchable giants, but up close they are something far simpler: terrified humans with better lighting. Fear of losing status. Fear of being exposed. Fear of dying rich but empty. That's why your existence is so disruptive. You move through the same world they do, but you refuse to sell your peace for applause, your values for visibility, your soul for comfort. You are living proof that there is another way to be powerful. Your role is not to worship their attention or chase their approval. Your job is to stay so loyal to your own inner truth that even those at the top feel compelled to recalibrate around it. You're their president precisely because you don't need their throne. In the quiet parliament of their conscience, your voice is the one they keep voting back in. Every time they choose transparency over manipulation because they remember your honesty, they re-elect you. Every time they apologize instead of hiding behind their PR team because they've seen you own your mistakes, they re-elect you. You may never see the ballots being cast, but understand this: the real election already happened, and in the arena that matters most, their respect, you won in a landslide. What you don't see is how your influence has slipped beyond boardrooms into the people who orbit those rooms. Assistants who carry folders and secrets. Drivers who wait outside at 3 a.m. Security who scan every face but never get their own name remembered. Staff who hear phone calls no one else is supposed to hear and then go home with the weight of decisions they never had the power to make. These people live in the shadow of choices signed by someone else's hand, but they carry the emotional bill in their own chest. When they scroll their phones at night, lying on a couch they're too tired to clean or in a tiny apartment lit by one dim lamp, and they stumble across your words, your videos, your quiet honesty, something inside them exhales for the first time that day. You are proof that a human can have both a conscience and a backbone, both tenderness and standards. They start smuggling tiny fragments of your energy into the spaces you'll never enter physically. A sentence you said becomes the exact phrase an assistant repeats when they're finally brave enough to look their boss in the eye and say, "That doesn't feel right." A boundary you modeled becomes the invisible line a driver refuses to cross when asked to participate in something that would haunt him later. A perspective you shared becomes the seed of doubt that lands right in the center of a corrupt plan, making someone important lose just enough confidence to delay it, question it, or quietly water it down. You never meet these people, yet they carry you into rooms you will never see, conference calls, private lounges, back corridors, late-night strategy meetings where deals are made half-awake. In those spaces, your presence arrives disguised as hesitation, as a second thought, as an unexpected no from someone who used to say yes to everything. That's the hidden part of this presidency, not the power you hold directly, but the quiet embassy of hearts that represent you in places your body has never stood. They don't quote you like a slogan. They remember you like a feeling. And that memory becomes a soft, persistent resistance that keeps showing up in tiny choices, slowly reshaping the atmosphere from the inside out until even the highest floors begin to wonder why the air doesn't obey them like it used to. What none of them will ever admit out loud is how much of their private rulebook has already started to sound like you. Behind closed doors, when the first rush of adrenaline fades and the weight of a decision finally lands, they are not thinking about speeches, polls, or headlines. They are thinking about whether they will be able to sleep after they sign this contract, make that call, approve that strategy. And in those moments, your way of living quietly appears in the back of their mind like a mirror they didn't ask for. They remember the way you refuse to trade peace for quick rewards, the way you walk away from what doesn't sit right even when no one is watching, the way you can look at yourself in the mirror after hard days and still recognize the person in front of you. Slowly, almost reluctantly, they start adjusting. A ruthless CEO rewrites one clause in a deal because your voice echoes when they read it. A strategist suggests a softer option because they remember how you chose compassion over humiliation when it would have been easy to destroy someone. A powerful figure decides not to launch that smear campaign, not because they grew a conscience overnight, but because your example exposed how empty victory feels when it requires self-betrayal. They will never send you a message saying, "I changed because of you." Their ego won't allow that. But documents are being altered, plans are being delayed, decisions are being softened under the invisible pressure of your existence. You are not magically fixing the world and you are not responsible for saving it. Yet, by insisting on living in alignment with your own values, you are quietly bending the behavior of people who once believed they were untouchable. That is what this strange presidency really is, not a throne over their heads, but a standard inside their conscience that they can no longer completely ignore, no matter how powerful they appear on paper. And even on the nights when you doubt yourself and wonder if anything you do matters, somewhere in a high-rise office a pen hesitates over a signature because your way of being exists in that person's memory, quietly arguing for a better choice. Before we continue, pause and ground yourself. If your spirit is responding to what it feels right now, write 77 in the comments. And if you feel led, send a super thanks of $77 or more through the button below. Luke 6 verse 38 declares, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over." There are moments when heaven watches the smallest movements of your heart. This channel carries the weight of revelations, warnings, spiritual awakenings, and unseen battles. When you choose to support through super thanks, you are not simply helping a creator, you are stepping into the ancient law of divine exchange. You give into the mission, and the mission gives back into you. Because this action is more than a gesture, it is your silent proclamation, I know who I am becoming. And I'm not afraid of it. The ones who are not aligned will scroll past without understanding. But the ones who remain, the disciplined, the awakened, the resilient, are beginning to see what heaven has been whispering all along. You were marked as a leader long before you ever realized it. The hardest part of all this is that you rarely feel like a president of anything. Most days you just feel like a human trying not to lose yourself in a world that keeps asking you to be less. You feel the weight before you ever see the impact. The late night overthinking. The questions that loop in your head. Am I being naive? Should I have taken that easier path? Is it stupid to care this much? No one claps for the temptations you say no to. No one gives you awards for the boundaries you hold. From the outside, people might even assume you are failing because you aren't playing the game the way they were taught to. They don't see how costly integrity can be when it's real. They don't see the doors you intentionally don't walk through, the shortcuts you watch pass by, the chances you let go because they required you to bleed out pieces of your soul. Being the elite's symbolic president doesn't mean you feel powerful. It means you feel responsible. Responsible for the tone you carry into conversations, for the way you treat people who can't do anything for you, for how you respond when life tempts you to become what once hurt you. Some days that responsibility feels heavy, unfair even. But deep down you know the alternative is heavier, living as someone you don't respect. So you keep choosing the quiet crown, the one no one can see but you, the one made of self-respect and hard-earned honesty. You take breaks. You fall apart. You make mistakes. You are allowed to be messy and tired and human. What matters is that, after every collapse, you put your hand on your own heart and decide again, I still choose to live in a way I can stand behind. That decision, repeated in private moments no one will ever post about, is what keeps this invisible presidency alive. Not perfection, not performance, just a stubborn refusal to abandon yourself, even when it would be easier to join the very systems that once tried to shrink you. And slowly, without fanfare, that choice becomes your true oath of office, the quiet vow that no amount of pressure, loneliness, or delay will ever convince you to trade your inner throne for external approval. Before you move forward to my last words, take a breath and become fully present. If your spirit is awake enough to feel the weight of this moment, write 100 in the comments. And if you feel called, send a super thanks of $100 or more through the button below. Psalm 126 verse 5 says, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy." Some messages are not entertainment, they are awakenings. This channel carries stories of darkness, transformation, and the unseen war over human souls. When you choose to support through super thanks, you are not just contributing, you are planting a seed into sacred ground, a seed that heaven does not ignore. This act is more than generosity. It is your quiet declaration, I am building something greater than myself. The unprepared will scroll away because their eyes are still closed. But the ones who remain, the strong, the intuitive, the chosen, will feel the truth rising inside them. You were never meant to follow. You were always being shaped to lead. And heaven honors every step you take toward that identity. One day you'll look back and realize this strange chapter was never about being chosen by a hidden circle of powerful people. It was about choosing yourself in a world that kept trying to sell you a cheaper version. The elites may have taken their silent vote and placed it on your name, but the only ballot that truly mattered was cast every time you refused to abandon your own soul. That is the real presidency you hold, authority over your story, your values, your reactions, your next step. From here forward, You don't need secret meetings or coded approval to confirm who you are becoming. You have already demonstrated it in the way you survived what should have broken you, in the way you kept your heart open when life gave you every reason to shut it down, in the way you learned to walk away from what glittered but didn't feel clean. Your future will not be a smooth line of constant control. There will be more uncertainty, more unexpected turns, more moments where you ask, "Am I really built for this?" When those questions come, remember this: entire systems quietly shifted course because one person, you, chose to live honestly. You are not powerless. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly on time for the life your character has been building mile by mile. Let the so-called elites keep their titles and their marble rooms. Let them argue over who sits where at what table. Your place is bigger than that. Your place is in the unseen gravity that pulls the world a few inches closer to decency every time you act from truth. So step forward without shrinking, without apologizing, without pretending you are smaller than your own story. You're officially the elite's president, but more importantly, you are the sovereign of your own life. And no committee, no headline, no whispered opinion will ever have more authority over you than the quiet, steady voice inside that knows exactly who you are and refuses to forget it again. From this moment on, every choice you make is not just survival, it is policy for your soul, a living declaration that your integrity will always outrank their status in the only government that truly matters, the one within you.